I would suggest like the basic textbook is like Winter, that we all know. That is the most basic textbook for metamorphism in geology. For any examination like GATE, NAT, even for JAM also. So, and if you see the normal GSI questions and any sort of like questions from any like all India job examination for any sort of job like BARC or anything, you will see most of the questions are of petrology are very basic and conceptual, and we won't like discuss the very like childish things that we you have learned in the bachelor years. We will just focus on the like important parts that are a bit increased or higher. So the book that I would suggest, another one other than Winter, is uh, Kurt Butcher's Metamorphic Geology. That is Butcher's book of metamorphism, and this book actually is very helpful for metamorphic studies. And I would suggest that other than studying Winter, you should go for Butchers. And for geothermobarometry of metamorphic geology, the book of Yardley. I think many people have heard about this book, Yardley's book. This book is also very important for studying for GATE purpose. See, GATE's main MCQ and some MSQ that comes, those questions are like not something which is which stops the score of the student. Those are the most scoring questions. The students get mainly confused in the uh, main examination, like in the numericals, or in some MSQ the students get confused. And to overcome that confusion, I would suggest to at least have a read of these books so that you can understand everything. So we will start with metamorphism. The very basic of metamorphism is like the difference between a diagenesis and metamorphic phase. You should. I'm just focusing on what you should remember, that you will find in any metamorphic book. Like in Butchers, you will find it. The initial minerals which determine that the metamorphism has started, like pyrophyllite, larsonite, those type of minerals, that carnolite, those type of minerals which shows that from diagenesis the metamorphism has started. So try to from remember those mineral names which are important for classifying or the difference between diagenesis and metamorphism. Okay. So metamorphism can be divided into different types that we all know, that is the contact or regional, and hydrothermal, fault, or impact. So we know about contact metamorphism, like the main contact metamorphism is the metamorphism which is forming when the rock or the country rock is intruded by any igneous body, and the igneous body makes the country rock. Like if this is a country rock and dike or something still intrudes the igneous body, then when the contact region gets heated up, and the nearest region gets like hugely heated, and the temperature increases of that area to a higher extent, and the texture that we find in this contact or pyrometamorphism is of Hornfelsig in nature. That is very basic geology, like that is Hornfelsig. So the main characteristic of a Hornfelsig phase is what that you should recollect that the main characteristic feature for a Hornfels texture is that it has a texture which do not have a specific arrangement of the minerals, and the minerals are like arranged in haphazard way, like not in a specific direction, and they are arranged in like any sort of ways. And because this happens because of the sudden heating of the minerals in the country rock, which gets heated to a larger extent to a very fast rate, and this heating caused the sudden stability change of the minerals, and when they get cooled down, they become arranged in very haphazard manner. So this Hornfels texture is the most characteristic texture that we all know about the contact metamorphism. Okay, and the difference between like contact and pyrometamorphism is what it is, that pyrometamorphism is very like specific to a certain region, and like pyrometamorphism is a local phenomenon of contact metamorphism. Okay, and that is the only difference between pyrometamorphism and contact metamorphism. And other than that, the regional metamorphism is a metamorphism which is happening throughout a very large region, that can be due to any orogenic activity like any collisional activity of mountains or any certain directional stress or something. Those can cause this sort of orogenic metamorphism. Boreal metamorphism is the metamorphism which is formed like when in the normal stratigraphic horizon normal deposition takes place, and the rocks which are deposited in layers, they are the oldest ones in the normal scenario, the oldest ones are near the bottom and the youngest ones are near the top. So if we have a boreal scenario, then we can see like layers of rocks deposited together, and the geothermal gradient that is present, that changes with respect to the depth. So the temperature and the pressure increases towards higher depth. So if somebody is joining, so if we want to see that if this is the lowest one second, if this is the lowest layer, the oldest layer, that is I determine it as A, and this is the youngest if I determine as D. So this in A layer the temperature is much higher than that of D, and also the pressure in A is much higher than that of D. Okay, so for that reason what happens, D may withstand diagenesis only because of its burial condition, but towards the higher depth, A having a higher temperature and pressure, A might have a burial metamorphism, that is a very like low grade metamorphism. It's not a metamorphism of very high grade, and boreal metamorphism can happen throughout a long area, and most of the minerals that are formed in boreal metamorphism are very low grade minerals like chlorite, maximum biotite, muscovite, etc. Okay, and similarly ocean floor metamorphism happens when the basaltic rocks that are erupted, when there is a ridge separation event, when we find there is a separation of ridges in, see these questions for like when we focus on questions of gate, like you might find like these are very basic things that we all know, but to start with something unknown, I think you should like have a very basic strength, so that if some questions come like pyrometamorphism contains which type of structures like that, then you can have an idea about what can be there. Anyway, so this ocean floor metamorphism, what happens when there is a mid-oceanic ridge separation area, then the basalt as we know comes up and gets deposited in the ocean floor, and these basalts have a sodic component sometimes, that is there for that reason, that is that they forms like a spilite. In some cases they form spilite, and also the basaltic rocks get metamorphosed with time to form metabasalts. Okay, so these metabasalts are spreaded throughout a huge region, because ridge separation is a region of a is characterized for a huge large region. So for that reason we can say that this is also a part of the regional metamorphism. Okay, the hydrothermal metamorphism is something which is when high temperature water or any sort of fluid intrusion takes place in the rock body, causing the changes in the mineral constituents of the rock, and causing change in the temperature pressure condition of the rock, and causing metamorphism. This can be happening even in the land or even in the sea. Like the most important hydrothermal deposit, like of manganese or phosphorus, these hydrothermal deposits in the ocean are a premium example of hydrothermal metamorphism. And fault zone metamorphism is something which is we all know in the faults. In any sort of geological faults we can see this type of metamorphism, the fault zone metamorphism, where the in the region of friction where the fault is taking place, there is a higher chance of heating and higher increase in pressure condition, which causes the nature of the rocks to get metamorphosed. Impact or shock is happening when there is impact of any meteoritic body, and you should know that the impact and shock or shock metamorphism causes the formation of stishovite, not only quartzite. Sometimes it can form the quartz component known as stishovite, and here the normal silicate coordination number is 4, right? But when there is a higher increase in pressure, like in stishovite condition, the silicate coordination number changes to 6. Okay, so remember this thing, that when there is a higher pressure condition, like in the shock metamorphism, when there is a formation of stishovite, there can be a silicate coordination number will change to 6. So sometimes there may be a question about the silicate coordination number when there is a shock metamorphism, or there can be question about the difference between the silicate coordination number of a normal and a shock metamorphism. Then you should know the coordination number. Anytime when there is a very high increase in pressure, the silicate coordination number increases to 6. So remember this thing, that whenever there is a higher pressure condition, the silicate coordination number changes to 6. Okay, this I won't be in detailing like in your earlier days. I'm not going to do that because it's a bit would be boring for you to know the same things again and again. Uh, I would like you all to, because these are very basic questions. I know that the Barrovian zone, we all know that the Barrovian zone is divided into the Barrovian area is divided into this type of zones. That is, if you want to remember, it is CBG, SKS. Okay, sorry, CBG, SKS. So CBG SKS means chloride, biotite, garnet, staurolite, kyanite, sillimanite. So CBG SKS is classified for the Barrovian zone, but there is also a zone known as the Buchan zone that is characterized by these minerals: chloride, biotite, cordierite, andalusite, sillimanite. And sometimes question comes to differentiate between the Barrovian and the Buchan zone, because both of them almost represent the same sort of metamorphism, but only there is a certain change in the temperature pressure condition. So Buchan zone, this is Buchan zone, and Barrovian zone we came to know about CBG SKS. So try to remember, because see, both of them are almost related, like the initial minerals, some of the final minerals, they are very much like related. So I will suggest you guys to at least remember, if you have not done it till now, please do it, to find the difference between chloride biotite, the Buchan zone, and the Barrovian zone. Because see, in the Buchan zone there is cordierite present. In the Barrovian zone, when there is a metamorphism of the pelitic rocks, you will see this cordierite to be forming in a granulite facies condition. Okay, the cordierite in the uh, Buchan zone is not forming in a granulite facies condition. It is in a transitional facies condition. But in case of uh, Barrovian zone, when there is a formation of cordierite, it is formed in a case of when there is a formation of orthopyroxene, and for that reason, that area is classified under the mainly under the granulite facies condition. So this is a huge difference. So remember that Buchan zone do not have garnet and it do not have staurolite, but it has cordierite and andalusite. It also doesn't have kyanite. Okay, the kyanite is replaced in Buchan zone by andalusite, right? So remember this thing, the difference between Buchan and Barrovian zone. Okay, so we will just give a synopsis about how the Ryoki Sanbegawa plate is present as a paired metamorphic belt. The the presence of this type of metamorphic belt in Japan actually gives a certain like paired metamorphism where there is a normal like subduction zone, and when there is a subduction zone there will be a part of abducted plate, right? And when in these conditions the complete presence of a subduction as well as abducted plate is present in the Japan area. Okay, so for that reason this area have a huge amount of earthquake present, because the plate movement is very spontaneous and very random. So like here we can have earthquake anytime in the day, and it's very normal here for us to have earthquake. So so this area where it is a paired metamorphic belt, this area is classified why to be a paired metamorphic belt, because the subduction zone situations have blue cyst and eclogite facies, right? And blue cyst and eclogite facies is that type of facies which denotes a higher pressure but lower temperature condition, right? But here in these areas you will find, see, these questions are both important for your uh, gate as well as GSI examination, because in GSI, in the objective as well as in the subjective, like when in the mains, when you're going to write in the mains, you will have to completely write a like paired metamorphic belt, and this is like these questions are very common questions in GSI examination, right, about the paired metamorphic belt. So you have to give a diagram and you have to be very on point on what you're going to answer, and you have to like give some references, it would be better, and that will make you score good marks in mains. Okay, those who are interested in GSI. Okay, so see here, for the when there is a subduction zone situation, we have what the blue cyst eclogite in the subducted plate, that represents a high pressure low temperature condition, But here, when the plate gets melted and the melt rises up to form a higher heat or temperature condition in these areas, in the abducted plate areas, here we find amphibolite or granulite facies conditions in some portions. Amphibolite or granulite facies conditions. Uh, granulite, okay. So here in this portion we can see a higher temperature but moderate pressure condition. A higher temperature but moderate pressure condition. So here you can see that in a single regional area you can see both type of metamorphism of a high pressure low temperature as well as a high temperature moderate pressure condition. So when this happens in a single area, this is represented as a paired metamorphic belt. Okay, so that is the reason that we call this area to be a paired metamorphic belt, because you have a pairing of a high pressure and a high temperature together in a certain area, and it is not possible to have this both a very high pressure and very high temperature sort of metamorphism in a single area. Okay, so try to remember, and if there any question in GSI also for MCQ as well, then try to answer about the Ryoki Abukama or Ryoki Sanbegawa plate, which one is which. Okay, so other than that you don't have to like remember everything about, because these things are not that important for your gate purpose. But I would like you to focus on the textures as well as the different classification of the metamorphic rocks, because the classification and these things, these uh, are many people or many students do not like try to recollect. They only focus on the ACF AKF diagram. We will learn about the ACF AKF in the next class. Like we will learn in depth about how the ACF AKF diagrams everything works, and how you will answer the different questions of gate examination. If you have seen the questions for gate examination, you will see that some questions are like this, that they have given a ACF diagram or something, and they have shown some lines, and they have asked you this belongs to which type of reaction or this belongs to which type of phases. Okay, so we will learn about it and to how to like form those things and how to answer those questions. But I would like you all to start solving for gate examination as well, because the next net examination will be maybe in December or January. So they that if you are preparing for gate right now, you will be having like a good strength before February when the gate actually happens. So please try to solve questions because you have time. The first year MSc students, they have a good time to solve questions, like the first year ones who are going to enter into the second year. Those people, I'm asking those people to start solving gate questions from now on. If you don't have that gate question books, you can uh, buy it online. The question books like R Gupta, or I don't remember, the publication was R Gupta I guess, the blue book, and that contains a lot of questions, or else you can download the questions as well from internet. It is like freely available for 10 years, and you can easily obtain 10 years question with respect to their answers, and try to start solving gate questions, because you see, the MCQ questions are something which is very normal to you guys because you have all have an idea about JAM. So the MCQ and the MSQ questions will be very normal to you guys if you are studying in a normal phenomenon, not like randomly moving here and there. If you're not doing that, then you will have an idea about the MCQ questions. You may face difficulty in the MSQ or in some part of NAT because there is geophysics. Uh, Maybe after finishing Metamorphic, I would like to start some parts of geophysics because the basic formulation are very much required for geophysical studies. So I will help you in those regards, and I will give you the formulation as well. So if you can study about uh, how I'm guiding or how you can yourself spend some time on the subject, then I think everyone will at least get a good rank in GATE examination. And GATE rank actually plays a good role for first your CV, but other than that, the GATE rank actually plays a good role for getting enrolled in some good for PhD for any good technical institutes like IIT or anything, as well as it plays a very good role for ONGC or Coal India jobs. Those people who are interested in jobs, as well as BARC. Okay, BARC also takes GATE rank in consideration. So I will suggest you guys to prepare from now on about GATE examination because you have time till now. It's like June, and you have a hell lot of time to prepare. So if you can give some time in preparation, then you can easily like score. Anyways, so the normal foliation lineation, we will just have a recap about how the foliated and lineated rocks work. Foliated means there is a directional plane, and lineated means there is a directional line in the rocks. And when there is a anisotropic rock, like the rock which has faced any sort of tectonic activities, they get like arranged in a certain direction, and that can be found more prominently towards this area, the cystosity. When there is a prominent cystosity, we can understand the foliation planes, and we understand the folds when we study a cystosity, because cystosity is very common for geology students because most of the rocks that we see in the earth, like in our field areas, are most of them are cyst. Like, I think most of the Indian students where they do field, they will definitely see a cyst in their life. Okay, so this cystosity is something which is a very prominent planar structure, and the certain difference in phyllite and cyst is that phyllite has the orientation of the minerals, but phyllite has a like a certain sheen called like a certain brightness or thing known as phylitic sheen. This differentiates it between a phyllite and a cyst, because if you have seen a prominent, not like weathered phyllite or a prominent schist in hand, you can easily differentiate between a phyllite and a schist. But a slate is like the very basic one, which is like recently formed and very fragile in nature. Like slate rocks easily break down very quickly. Okay, but phyllite and cyst, they are relatively stronger, and gneiss, as we know, has a certain band for the felsic and mafic rich minerals. They get separated and they get banded in certain layers with respect to the direction of the anisotropic stress. Okay, and we I'm not going to discuss about what is a quartzite, what is a marble, because that would be very basic question. But even for the jam purpose, sorry, get purpose, please remember, I know we are not learning about jam, but please don't forget about blue cyst is made of. Please don't forget about what is eclogite is made of. Maybe you can uh, you won't be reading this thing now, you won't be giving any head to now, because I know you have a lot of other things to study. But if you forget these basic questions about how the eclogites or how the blue cyst mineralogy varies, you will be like banging your head in front of the computer. Okay. The main classification of an eclogite is that eclogite, like the main identification feature, one of the main identification feature of eclogite is that eclogite, being a very high pressure, in a very high pressure condition, eclogite is devoid, or eclogite do not contain any plagioclase mineral. Okay. Because eclogite being in a very high pressure condition, the highest pressure condition, eclogite do not contain any plagioclase group of minerals. Okay. Eclogite is devoid of plagioclase. Okay. uh, we will then, I will try to go towards the textures today. I've tried to complete textures today because I need a class for ACF, AKF, and everything. Okay, so textures of metamorphism are also the background study of metamorphism that we all have been doing in our masters, or will or have done together. Uh, the textures in metamorphism, you, for your uh, gate purpose, I will help I will suggest you to remember the some technical diagrams about how the metamorphism can form. See, when there is a starting of metamorphism, there can be a change in the, when, if it is hydrothermal, or if it is like a uh, the metamorphism is forming in a changed temperature pressure environment. When there is a temperature pressure as well as fluid pressure, those things changes for the rock elements, or the rock minerals, they get sometimes aligned with respect to the stress, or they get aligned with respect to the directional stress. And after that, they may have like the mineral get recrystallized, or the minerals try to gain more stability. Okay. That happens when there is a grain boundary migration. Okay. And as well as the, as we all know, the granoblastic polygonal texture, right? There is a 120-degree polygon that happens when there is a granoblastic polygonal texture, right? Because this is the most stable version of the quartz mineral. And the, when there is any sort of like change in the temperature with respect to time, when there is a higher change in temperature pressure condition, then the mineral will try to attend towards a higher stability. Okay. So when we can find a mineral, the mineral grain boundary will start to migrate towards the other minerals, so that it can increase its grain boundary, and it can have a like the surface area decreases. Okay. The grain boundary migration is a process by which the minerals get towards a more stabilized condition, because you know, between an elephant and a mouse, it is written in this book also, I'm just quoting from this book, between an elephant and a mouse, the elephant has a lower surface area than that of a mouse. Okay, so for that reason, there is this grain boundary migration phenomenon to reduction of the surface area of the regions, and for that reason, when there is a higher grade of metamorphism happening, then the minerals get crystallized to a larger, like big grains than that of very fine grains. Okay, so this type of activity happens, and the minerals do this, or it is done by nature to attain stability condition depending upon the increase in temperature pressure. Okay, and this grain boundary migration is also known as sometimes as Oswald ripening. The here it is written somewhere, or else I'm just writing it about it. Oswald ripening phenomenon. Oswald ripening. This is PE, Oswald ripening phenomenon. Okay, so this is some type of like importance about the how the minerals actually forms after the metamorphism proceeds. So for that reason only, see slate, that division that we just read about between slate, phyllite, schist, and gneiss, you can see that when there it is slate, it is very fine grained. When it is phyllite, it is a bit coarser. When it is schist, it is a bit coarser. And when it is gneiss, it is much coarser in nature. Okay, so that is a reason of why this coarsening happens. Okay, this is the diagrammatic things of the technical diagrams that are formed when there is a metamorphic phenomenon, and you should know about how this what these diagrams actually mean. Try to remember what this diagram actually means, because sometimes in gate they actually gives you questions directly from these things. Okay, so try to remember the diagrams and how the diagrams actually change, and what each diagram actually means. So please try to remember depending upon the diagrammatic things. Okay, so metamorphic textures are like the basic igneous textures that we know, the porphyroblastic or the poikiloblastic texture. The porphyroblastic texture is same as the porphyritic texture in igneous rock, that there is a matrix mineral and there is a like porphyry or a main mineral that is present in a huge grain size, and we have lot of matrix. The grain size, the high grain size mineral is the phenocryst, and this is the ground mass that is present in and around it. And this type of texture is known as the porphyritic texture, and this same happens for that of metamorphic rock, and this is known as the porphyroblastic texture. And in here that we know as phenocryst, in metamorphism these are known as porphyroblasts. Okay, and similarly when there is a specific like poikilytic texture that we remembered in like igneous phenomenon, where the mineral grains like bounded or get included with respect to a certain mineral grain. And this type of like mainly we find in the ophitic texture between plagioclase and pyroxene. And similarly the same thing when it is like surrounded by minerals and inclusions, this type of texture in metamorphic is known as poikiloblastic texture. Okay, so the Hornfels texture that we just discussed was about the contact metamorphism rocks, and these things are things you should never like forget, because uh, questions can come from these things. Okay, so the main directional or these things, structural directional things These are present in structural, but still for the micas like muscovite or biotite, these micas, what happened to them, the directional condition is very important to remember, okay, because these are known as mica fish depending upon the direction. See, this theta type and phi type, these two do not define any certain direction because they are bidirectional in nature. The sigma and the delta type and this mica fishes, the sigma or delta, they mainly determine the direction of the anisotropic stress. Okay, they give us the direction of the anisotropic stress, but the theta and phi type, they do not give the directional, they do not have any directional significance of where the thing is going. Okay, so for studying about this, or for like getting a good idea about like microtextures or metamorphic microtextures, I will suggest you to read about, if you have time, you can read about Pashier and Trow book. This name you can see, Pashier and Trow. I think many people have heard about it. If you haven't, then you can Google about it. That the, if you want, I can also send the book in the group, the Pashier and Trow book. It is the complete book about structural as well as metamorphism and microtextures. So Pashier and Trow is like a bible for understanding the microtextures, and there are many conceptual things written in the book, and I will be guaranteeing you that if you at least have read the book, then you will have a like a really strong concept about structural and metamorphism, because it is like that, it is written like that, and it is not something that is written in a very harsh language or very tough language. It is written in very easy language, and you can easily have many new concepts that you do not know till now. Okay, so I would suggest you guys to at least give a look to that book. Okay, so these are the structural things here written about the structural, and I'm not telling you about structural here. Uh, there are any important things left? Only this, the kinematic study about when and where the minerals were formed. Okay, the kinematic study is about before the stress or after the stress event, like when in a certain region, when there is a stress happening, there can be metamorphic phenomenon before the stress happened, or there can be metamorphic phenomenon after the stress happened. Okay, and there can be also a metamorphic phenomenon when the stress is happening. Like स्ट्रेस इज नॉट समथिंग कि भाई आ रहा हूँ मैं, याद रखना मैं आ रहा हूँ, अभी कुछ मेटामॉर्फोस मत करना. So stress doesn't inform it like that. It can happen randomly anytime. And when there is an anisotropic stress in a certain direction, the minerals which were present, or the metamorphic rocks actually, which were present earlier than the stress happened, they get aligned with respect to the stress, right? But the metamorphic minerals which were not present when the stress were happening and formed later to the stress direction, they form like differently than that of the initial stress direction, right? They are not completely aligned with the initial stress direction. So because they are formed later, like for example, if stress is happening towards this direction, right, and a mineral was formed earlier here, then the mineral will be aligned towards the stress direction, right? But when there is a stress direction and there was no mineral present here, but a mineral forms later, it will be aligned against the stress direction, like it will not follow the initial stress direction, and that creates the difference between a pre-kinematic and a post-kinematic crystal, which is formed before the kinematic activity or which forms after the kinematic activity. Okay, so these I think you have studied this in jam also. If you have given jam, then I think you have studied about this in jam also. In gate also, this is very important. See, I am telling you, for gate and jam in the MCQ, there is not very huge, like something very typical, huge difference in the MCQ and MSQs, as well as in NAT also. You can even some jam students try to solve like NAT or MCQ even in their bachelor's also, because we practice, because the questions are not like something very hugely difficult. For that reason, you should have an idea about the older things that you have studied. Okay, so please do not omit this thing out of your knowledge and try to study them, because that's what I was telling, that even if you're giving like gate examination, even if you're giving like jam examination, you will have a good grasp about gate also, because I the first qualification I got for gate was in my like just after completing my jam. So that is not something very like different for that reason. Okay, so uh, see here I will show you about how these structures, these were see following about the metamorphic stress, like the anisotropic stress. See, these are following the stress direction, or the stress formed an eye over the minerals. If there won't be any mineral present before the stress happened, like here you can see that it happened before the stress, it was present even before the stress happened, right? But uh, in this scenario, if there was this mineral not present, the stress direction would be normally like this, and the mineral would be formed over the stress direction. The stress will be like this, and the mineral will be formed over it like this. There won't be this eye-shaped things. Eye-shaped things formed because of what? The mineral was very strong or rigid itself, and the stress could not like uh, break it or do anything. It rolled it towards its direction, and it formed a eye near it, right? Okay, so this was like this. You have to remember all of this pre-kinematic structures that are present. Okay, and you have to remember all the post-kinematic structures, mainly this helicitic folds and everything. You have to remember these things about the post-kinematic scenarios, and as well as I said about something, that when there can be a metamorphism when the stress is actually happening, that is known as synkinematic structure or synkinematic mineral. Those synkinematic growth is only present shown by snowball garnet. If you haven't heard of it, then please do remember about the snowball garnet, because this is shown by this type of garnet structures during the stress events or during the kinematic events. So these are known as synkinematic structures. Okay, other than this, there is nothing in details to study about the uh, about the metamorphic rocks, and I will tell you guys to at least give a read to the Pasher and Trow book with time if you have any interest in this type of metamorphic or structural geology. Then please do give a read about how about the Pasher and Trow book. You will like be enriched in lot of concepts. But for mainly for get purpose, you can only just read from this Winter book and Butcher or MG Best. MG Best is another book for metamorphic geology. There are there are many books about any thing, any subject. Like I can tell you a lot of book names that I've read only about metamorphic. So MG Best, Kula Simistra, and Yardley, and there are a lot of Butcher. There are a lot of books. Okay, but it's better to just, because you are not researching on metamorphic, it's better to just fix in one book, and that is mainly maybe uh, Winter and Butcher and Yardley, like that. Anything you suits you guys. Okay, in the next class we will start about the in details about ACF-AKF and how to answer those ACF-AKF questions in GATE, like how to answer those questions. And after we learn it, uh, I think that will be more than anything for your metamorphic petrology, because if you have seen throughout the GATE questions, and we will run about geothermobarometry as well, about the reaction of the geothermobarometry, because questions mainly come from this geothermobarometry or the ACF-AKF diagrams, and as well as some very basic questions that I taught you today. So maybe in 3 classes we will complete it.
স্যার
And
ফেসিস থেকে আসে না?
phases, we will about the when we are going to study about ACF-AKF, we will study through the metamorphism of pelitic rocks and everything. So when we are going to study about those things, we will learn about the phases.
ওকে,
Okay, so that's all. Ima ijo desu. Arigato. You can leave.
Tata.
Tada.